Welcome to Let's Make Waves podcast. I'm Rana Al-Basri Mawad, and I believe that we're all here to make waves. I created this podcast to help you unlock your potential by sharing with you tools, resources, and strategies to help you build and grow your business. So if you're looking to build your brand, gain that confidence and knowledge, content and marketing strategies, find your professional voice, attract those raving customers, and create the professional authority for better business opportunities, then you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Let's Make Waves podcast. I'm your host, Rana Mawad, and I'm so excited that you're here with me today to talk about a topic that hits so many of us as entrepreneurs, imposter syndrome. So to start off this episode, I'd like to share with you this story that happened to me. So a few years into my business, by that time I've had great clients. Some of them are multinational household brands. I've worked with ad agencies, MBUs as a strategist on pitches that they've ultimately won. Basically by that time I was very confident, very comfortable in what I was doing. I was confident about my strengths, my expertise, and I knew that the client and the projects that I was handling, I was very confident that I could get positive results for. So things were nice and rosy. And then I got into this meeting, and this meeting was with a social media influencer, and she wanted to reach a new level in her brand that she could basically charge more when she's approached by brands. So I knew that to best tackle this and to rework on her pricing strategy, we needed to basically re-strategize her content, reposition her image, reposition her brand, and all that good stuff. So that was my game. I had built reputations for my clients before. I knew how I could get her to that position. But it was just during that meeting that there was uneasiness about it. The way the conversation was going just made me feel like I was, being questioned for my strategy that I was proposing. But I was questioned in a way that was a bit doubtful. I didn't feel that confidence from her end regarding my expertise and my success story track record. And that's usually fine because that happens in meetings sometimes. It's part of the pitch and the negotiation. And then it's also part of, what we do to turn the client around and to make them see, the benefits of our strategy. But not in that meeting. In that meeting, I started having different types of vibes. I was suddenly so sure that I cannot be the right person for this project, or just simply not the right person for this client. I mean, I had questions in my mind like, how can I be so sure that I can do this? I began doubting my experience, the relevance of my experience to this particular project. It was not fear, not at all. It was just something else. It was a feeling that I was not good enough to take this mission on. And I remember, working on the strategy proposal and doubting every decision I wrote in that proposal, every sentence. I was slowly convincing myself as I wrote that I was not qualified enough to write and to do this type of strategy. I didn't have what it took to get this person to the other side. And that is the feeling of being like an imposter. It just creeped on me that day. And I bet so many of you felt the same way like I did. That uneasy feeling that you're just not good enough, which is usually so far and completely different from the truth. Imposter syndrome is so common and much more common than what we think. And for the most of us, we get that feeling at one point in our career. That's okay. But the question is, how do we deal with it? So before I share with you some of the things that worked for me, I just want to stop momentarily to define what is imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is this pattern in which an individual like us doubts their skill, their talents, accomplishments, and has this consistent internalized fear that they will be exposed as fraud. And this can affect anyone, regardless of their job, social status, education, but it usually hits high achieving individuals who often, they often experience it the most. When I was reading about imposter syndrome, I discovered that psychologists first described the syndrome in 1978. So this is not something new. And according to a 2020 review, as high as 82% of people experience imposter syndrome. I also found out as I was researching that there are 5 different types of imposter syndrome out there. There's the perfectionist, the superman or the superwoman, the natural genius, the soloist, and the expert. And each one digs deeper into the triggers and the thoughts and the feelings that people get as as an imposter, as feeling as an imposter and feeling imposter syndrome. So I highly encourage you to dig deeper just to find out what are your triggers, what type of thoughts and feelings you get, and which type of imposter syndrome do you feel, so that you can find different ways to deal with it. So let's go back to my original question. How do we deal with this? So today I'd like to share with you 5 tips that I've researched, I've tried it out, and it worked for me. And I hope it works for you too. And this is the first one that worked for me the most. And that is to separate feelings from fact. Because there's so many times that I would feel like stupid, incompetent, inexperienced. And I know it happens to everyone from time to time. But just by realizing that because I was feeling that way, it doesn't mean that it was true. It is true. By identifying the fact from the feeling and separating them, that we realize that our mind is playing games on us, because the facts will prove that our thoughts are just simply not true. The second thing is to recognize when we feel this way and to break our silence and to voice it out. And I know that shame keeps a lot of us from sharing our feelings, but today we have a name for it. There's a name for those feelings. And today we know that we're not alone. And today we know that this is something that happens to a lot of us, and there are ways around it. And just by knowing and recognizing that, this is tremendously freeing. The third thing is to change the rules that we have for ourselves. And we operate, each one of us, we operate by different rules. Like with me, I would be like, I should know the answer. I know the answer. Some of us might think different rules, like, I don't ask for help. I can figure it out. Each one of us has certain sets of rules, and sometimes these rules just puts unrealistic pressure on us and on our capabilities. So just by recognizing that sometimes these rules can be bent, can be changed, and that we have the right, just like anybody else, to be wrong and to have an off day or to ask for assistance, that could really change the game for us. The fourth thing is to visualize our success. Now, I know this is like manifestation, but sometimes visualizing success during or before an event that we're doing. So, but just by spending time picturing, a successful presentation before we go and present, or by picturing ourselves being very calm and answering, questions calmly in a meeting before going into that meeting. Visualizing success can help tremendously in de-stressing us and de-stressing our nerves. And this is something that professional athletes do. So it works. So I'm sure it works in business as well. And the last thing is to re-script failure in our mind. And I say this is because the way we see failure, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I really believe that this is something that is taught in school or at home or, in certain societies. But failure is just, it's like, it's something like a stigma. I don't know what other word to use for it. But we need to develop a healthy response to just falling short and getting things wrong. We take in so much information, and sometimes we don't realize that There are certain decisions that we might take that are just not the right decisions. But just by knowing that that's okay, analyzing what went wrong, finding steps or strategies that can help us to do better choices next time is also okay. And just by redefining failure in our mind can also help in that kind of de-stressing our nerves, and also help in our journey and in certain situations when imposter syndrome creeps in. So there are so many tips out there, and I'm sure that depending on the type of imposter syndrome that you feel, you can find so many recommendations out there. And I'm not a professional psychiatrist to say more about this, but today I just wanted to share with you things that worked for me and these tactics that definitely works for me every time, imposter syndrome creeps out. So, as I previously mentioned, there's so many high achievers that have this secret where they feel like their accomplishments are, result of just complete luck. Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon. It gives you the false beliefs that despite all the evidence that indicates that you're skilled, qualified, and even successful, you feel, the exact opposite. And this pattern of thoughts and doubts can affect anyone, regardless of their job, social status, education, or experience. So today's episode is my way of telling you that you're not alone. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I'm very happy to have you here, and I'd love to connect with you more. So please feel free to connect with me on my website or my social or on social media. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my podcast, and we'll touch base again next week. So till then, have a great week and take care.